Hello guys, and welcome to this 11th tutorial about the full SQL course for beginners. If you haven't already watched the first part, you can find the links in the description. In this tutorial, we are going to talk about window functions. So window functions are very powerful when working with SQL since they allow us to perform and apply more advanced techniques that aggregation functions allow us to do in SQL. So to understand that better, we are going first to see how to use aggregation functions as window functions. To do that, we are going to use the word database and we are going to use the country table. So in this country table, we have a lot of columns. Among these columns, we can find the name, the continent, and the population in each country. For example, if we want to get the sum of population in all the countries, which means that the global population, we can write select sum population from country. This query will return for us the sum of population in one single row and one single column. And by definition, aggregation functions aggregate or retrieve for us result where the number of rows is less than the total number of rows in the table. This is by definition. What if, for example, if we want to display the sum of population in all the rows? For example, if we want to display the name, the continent, the population of, for example, the continent, and it will be available in each row. Like here, for example, we have the name, we have the continent, and we want the population in the continent to be the fourth column, and it will be displayed in all the rows. When we apply aggregation functions, we are not going to get this result, since it allows us to get only a limited number of rows. As you can see here, if we want to select the sum of population in each continent, and if we want to add the name of country, we cannot because the number of rows is limited to the number of continents. And we get the result using the aggregation functions and the group by. So group by will get for us groups of continents where the population of each continent is displayed. But when using window functions, we get exactly the total number of rows with a value assigned to each row. So we'll get exactly the number of countries, and in each row we'll get the, for example, the global population or the continent population, etc. And we get that using the over clause. So as we have said, we are going to select the name, the continent, and the sum of the population in the word. So we are not going to use group by, but we are going to use the over clause. Okay, so for example, if we omit this row, right, and we want to select only the global population, so we'll get the following. In each row, we will get the global population. Contrary to the group by, the over clause will allow us to retrieve the global population in all the rows. So all this is seen as a window. Okay, so the window is seen as the total table in this example. If we want to create a window within the over clause, okay, so we use partition by. With partition by, we are going to select the population in each continent, and we are going to display that in another column. So if we execute that, as we can see here, we will get two new columns. We will get the global population and the continent population. The global population will take in consideration all the table as window, since we have used over with nothing inside the parentheses, and we used an alias as global population. But in the continent population column, we have used partition by. So partition by will create partitions inside the over clause, and this partition will depend on the continent. As we can see here, the first partition is Asia, right? As we can see here, the first one is Asia. So this is our first window. In this first window, we are going to calculate the total population in Asia, and we are going to display it in this column. Same thing in Europe. So this is the second window or the second partition until North America. So it will calculate the population inside this window for each country, and it will display for us the result in all the rows that have countries in Europe. And same thing for the remaining. Whereas for the global population column, it will take all the sum of the population in the world and it will give us the result in this column for all the rows. Okay, so this is the main difference between over and group by. So over, it will allow us to display the result in all the rows, whereas for the group by, it will aggregate, or it will give us a limited number of rows depending on the group by expression. And as you can see here, we can use over with nothing inside the parentheses, or we can use partition by. So partition by, it will create partitions inside the table. So here, by definition, the execution of queries follows this order. So first we work with from, then join, where, group by, having, select, distinct, order by, and finally limit. And as you can see here from MySQL official documentation, window functions are executed after the from, where, join, group by, and having, and before order by, limit, and select distinct. So this is for the order of the execution. And now we are going to talk about the non-aggregate window functions, which are the window functions used in MySQL. So same thing, we are going to use the word database, and our first function is the row number function. As you can understand here, it means that it assigns a number to each row. It is used to assign an integer to each row of the window, which is the partition, and this partition is defined using partition by within the over clause. It assigns pairs different row numbers, which means that, for example, if we have two rows that have the same value, it will assign different row numbers. As we will see later on, there are functions like rank and rank, which assign the same row number to rows that have the same value. And the row numbers, they range from 1 to the number of partition rows. For example, here we want to select the name, the continent, the population, and we want to assign an integer or row number to each row. Okay, if we execute that, we can see that the column which is named row number assigns value from the first one up to the end, so up to the 239, because we have used over with nothing inside the parentheses. What is recommended when using row number is to assign integers to rows that are or that have a given order, because if rows are not sorted, giving numbers to each row will not have any meaning. So here, for example, we are going to select the same thing, but we are going to create partitions depending on each continent. So we are going to create windows that will depend on the continent, and each partition will be sorted by population in the descending order. So if we execute that, we'll get the following. So the first continent is Asia, and the highest population is as follows. It has row number 1. So we have until the 51. Okay, so all this is the first partition, starting from China up to Maldives, right, which has row number 51. So this is the first partition, partition by continent. The first continent is Asia, and it is ordered by population by the descending order. So this is the first window. Same thing when we go to the second continent, which is Europe, it will start over. So we have 1 up to 46. Same thing here, we have a new partition, which is Europe, and it is ordered by population. Okay, the alias is as row number, so this is the name of the column. And we do the same thing for the other partitions. So here the partitions depend on the continent, and in each continent we are going to order our population in a descending order, and we assign a row number to each row. Okay, so this is for the row number. And as you can deduce, over is used to define the set of rows that can be used as the window frame. As we have seen, we can use over with nothing inside the parentheses, which means that we are going to select all the rows or all the table. Or we can use partition by to classify the rows into groups. As we have seen, for example, each continent will have a set of rows, and for the set of rows we can assign, for example, a row number. Order by is used to order the rows within the window or partition. So as we have seen, for each continent, it will start over, for example, from Asia from 1 to 51, then for Europe from 1 to 43, 46. So it will order the rows depending on the partition. And as we will see in the next function, there are what we call rows or range that are used within this frame or within a partition, and the frame can be defined as a subset of the partition or window. So rows is used to define a number of rows with respect to the current row, and range is used to define the values with respect to the value in the current row. And we'll understand that when we apply first value and last value functions. For first value, it is used to return the value of the first row in the window frame from the specified column. So as we have said, we want to select the name, the continent, and the population, and we want to select the first value in population column over. So here we define our window frame. We define our partitions by continent. So we have Asia, Europe, North America, etc. We are going to order that by population in the descending order. And here we use the range. As we have said, we use the range to define a range of values with respect to the value in the current row. So we start from the first value. We execute that. We start from this value. So this is our first window. Okay. For Asia. And in our window, we are going to start from unbounded precedent, which means that we don't have any restriction for the values before the current row. And the next value, it will be current row. So it will be between unbounded precedent and current row. We start from the first row. We have this population. Preceding, we don't have any value before this value, and we have the current row. So the first value, it will be this value. If we go to India, so we have this one as the current row, and we don't have any restrictions for the values before this value. So we will have only these two values. And the first value, it will be this one. Same thing. So we go to the third, we go to the fourth, we go to the fifth, which means that we go row by row. And each time, the max population, we call it max population, is the first value. Since we have ordered our population in the descending order, this will be the highest value. Thus, it will be the value that will be displayed in max population in continent column. Same thing if we go to Europe, we are going to select our window for Europe, okay? Then we see our current row, unbounded preceding, so we don't have any value before this value. We go to the second, go to the third, we go to the fourth, and since we order that in the descending order, this will be the first value in our list, and we have called it max population in continent. Thus for Europe, it will be displayed for Russian Federation. And same thing, we are going to apply that to all our partitions. United States in North America, same thing. It will select the first value in this list, and since we have ordered that in the descending order, it will select for us this value. And if we don't specify the range, as we have here, we write range between and we write unbounded preceding and current row. This is the default value, even though if we do not specify the range, so this will be the default value. Okay? As we will see in the next functions, we can modify and we can use other keywords rather than unbounded precedent and current row. So this is for the first value, to return the value of the first row in the window frame from the specified column. First, we specify our partitions within overclose. Then we give an order. For example, if we do that in the ascending order and we execute, so the first value in the list, it will be this one. Okay? So this is the value number 1. Thus, it will be selected in here. And of course, we can change the name, so since here it is the minimum population in the continent. All right. And as we have said, we can use the range for the values, or we can use the rows to select defined rows. Same thing, we are going to select this name, the continent, the population, and we are going to select the first value for column population over. So here we define our window. Same thing, partition by continent, order by population in descending order, rows between the current row and unbounded following. So this is the inverse of the previous example. If we execute that, we get the following. Since we start from the current row and unbounded following, which means that we are in the first row, so this is the current row, okay? And unbounded following, thus we have only one value in this list, and the first value, it will be this one. Same thing when we go to the second row. This will be considered as current row, and it will start counting from this row. Okay, so here the first value is same thing, it is the same, and so on. Next we have last value. So last value is used to return the value of the last row in the window frame from the specified column. Same thing, I'm going to select the name, the continent, the population, last value from the population column, and here we define our window. So over partition by continent, order by population. Okay, we can use that in the ascending or descending. So by default it is ascending. And rows, we don't give any restrictions for the preceding or the following rows. If we execute that, we are going to get the maximum value. Okay, here we have our first partition for Asia. Okay, and the last value in this list is for China. Okay, so we start from this one up to the end of up to the last row in our partition, and it will select for us the last value. So in our case it is the maximum population in this continent. Same thing, if we do that for Europe, we get the last value. So here in our list the last value is for Russian Federation. Okay, as we have said, by default order by population it will be in ascending order, and the last value in this window frame is for Russia. Thus, in max population in continent column, we'll get only this last value. And we apply the same thing for the remaining partitions. Here we have another example where we are going to use one preceding and one following rows. Same thing, we are going to select the name, the continent, the population, last value from population, over partition by continent, order by population. By default it is ascending order, and we take in consideration one row before and one row after the current row. So if we execute that, as you can see here, so this is the current row, we'll take one before, so we don't have any rows before, and we take one after. So the last value in this list is this one. So we have two values in the list, and the last value is this one. Same thing when we go to this second row, so this is the current value, we take one before and one at the end, so we have this 3 as the list, and the last value in this list is this one, so it will put the last value in this one where the column is called X. Same thing if we go to the fourth row, so we'll get one before, one after, and the last value is this one. Okay, you can put any number that you want. For example, you can put 3 preceding and 3 following. When we execute that, we get the following. So this value, it will take, we don't have nothing before, it will take the 3 after, and the last value is this one, so it will put the last value. If we go to the second, it will take 1 before because we don't have more than 1, and 3 after, and it will select for us the last value. So the last value in this list, it will be this one, because our window or our partition is dependent on the number of rows that we have defined in here. So this is the main things that we can use with rows and range. Define the range or the rows, and the total rows before or rows that are following the current row. Same thing in here, we have the other function, which is the nth value. With the nth value, it is used to return the value of the nth row in the window frame from a specified column. So here, same thing, we select the name, the continent, and the population. In the nth value, we specify the column, and here the row that we want to get its value. Okay, same thing, we define our window, so over partition by continent, order by population in descending order, and we call it, we put an alias 10th population in continent. So if we execute that, we get the following. For the 10 first rows, we don't have anything. Okay, as you can see here, for example, we can add the row number. Okay, so I'm going to select row number. Okay, and we add over partition by, we call it as y, for example. So if we execute that, we get the following. So until the 9th, we don't have anything. Starting from the 10th, we get this value. Okay, We have null because from 1 to 9 we don't have this value. It does not exist. Starting from the 10th row, so the 10th value in this partition, which is Asia, okay, is this one, okay, which corresponds to this country, which is Turkey, right? Same thing, we will get the same result for example, for Europe. Here for the 9 first rows we don't get anything, so we'll get null values. Starting from the 10th, we will get this population of Netherlands, right? Same thing for North America, etc. So this is for selecting the nth value, which will depend on the exercise, okay? But the difference between the first value and the last value with the nth value is that for the first and the last we put only the population, so we put only the column. Whereas for the nth value, we put the name of the column and we add the position, okay? And same thing, we can combine the three functions and we use them at the same time. We select the first value, we select the last value, and we select the nth value. So every column is separated with a comma, 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 and if we execute that, we get the following. So we'll have the name, the continent, and the population. We have the three. Then we have the max population, the mean population, and the 10th population in continent. So this is when we want to use the three functions at the same time. Next we have lead function. So lead returns the value of the column from the row that leads the current row by n rows within its partition. For example, same thing, we are going to select the name, continent, and population. So we write lead, the name of the column, which is population, and we select only one row. We select our window, so over partition by continent, order by population in the ascending order, and we call it next higher population. So if we execute that, we can see that the row which is after this one is the next row, and we put this value in here. Okay, so this is the row that leads the current row. Same thing in here, the next row is this one, so which is next higher population, and we put it in the next higher population. Same thing in here, we get the next one, and so on. For example, if we put here 2, we execute that, and we get the second. So we have 1, which is the current row, so 1 after, 2 after. So this is the second row after the current population, and we put it in the next higher population. Same thing for this one, we have 1 and 2, and we put this value in here, and so on. So this is for the lead function, and it is used as following. So you write lead, the name of the column, and here the total number of rows. Same thing, we have the other function, which is lag. Lag returns the value of the column from the row that lags. So here we have the row that leads, here the value, the row that lags, the current row by n rows within its partition. For example, if we execute that, we have the name, the continent, the population. Same thing, we write lag, the name of the column is population, and we write only one column. Over, so we have our window, and here order by population in descending order. We can also add the condition. We select only the countries which are in Asia. If we execute that, we get the countries in Asia, and as you can see here, we don't have value before this value. Thus, for the first row in population of previous country column, we have null. Whereas here, the previous value is the population of China, thus it will put it in here. Same thing for Indonesia, and so on. Here we are going to use an example about year-over-year growth in a company, and year-over-year growth is used to measure the growth of a company from one year to another. Thus, by definition, it is calculated by subtracting the revenue of, for example, this year, 2022, with the revenue of 2021, and to see the difference. If the difference is positive, then this is a good sign. Otherwise, which means that the company is losing money. To do that, we are going to create a table. We call it a revenue table. It has year and it has a value. So we execute that and we insert into revenue table values. So here we add them in order: 2017, 2019, 2019, 2020, and 2021. And we have the revenue of each year. Okay, this is just an example. And if we execute that, select all from revenue table, and we have the following. So in 2017, we have this revenue. In 2018, we have this revenue, etc. Now to calculate the year-over-year growth, we are going to use the lag function. We are going to create a new column that we will call val previous year, which means that in here we will get another column for example, in 2018 we have here the value of 2018, and we'll get the value of 2017. We calculate the difference between these two, and we get our result. So if we execute that, we get the following. So for 2017, as you can see, we have only the value of 2017. We don't have the value of 2016, thus it will display for us null. Whereas for 2018, we have the value, and here we have the value of 2017. So we calculate this revenue of 2018 minus the revenue of 2017, we get the year-over-year growth. So it is negative, which means that it is a bad sign for the company. Same thing, in 2019 we have this revenue and we have the revenue of the previous year. So the difference is positive, which means it is a good sign. So this is just an example where we can use the like function, and as you can see here, we can use it to calculate the year-over-year growth. Next, we have NTILE function, which is used to distribute the rows for each window partition into a specified number of ranked groups. For example, if we want to select the name, the continent, and the population, and we want to create 10 groups. Okay, so we want to create 10 groups in each partition. So our window is defined as follow: over partition by continent, order by population in a descending order, as group number from country, and we are going to select only countries that are in Asia. If we execute that, we get the following. As you can see here, I have written here select count name from country where continent is Asia, which means that it will give us all the countries that are in Asia. So we have 51. If we want to create 10 groups in 51 elements, we have to create 9 groups which have 5 elements and another group which has 6 elements. So when using NTILE 10, we are going to get the first group. We will have this 6 elements, okay, by default. Then the second group will have 5 elements. The third group will have 5 elements. The fourth group 5 elements, etc. until the 10th group. As you can see here, we have created 10 groups in the partition where continent is Asia, and in this partition we have 51 elements. The first group, it has 6 elements, and the remaining they have 5 elements. For example, if we omit the condition where continent is Asia, we can see the following. So for the first continent, first window up to the 51, it is here, okay. Then when we go to the second partition, which is Europe, it will start counting over. Same thing, we are going to select the first group, the second group, the third group, etc. until the 10th group. So as we have said, NTILE is used to distribute the rows for each window partition into a specified number of ranked groups, which we define inside the function. Now we'll talk about ranking functions. So we have mainly 3 different functions. We have rank, percent rank, and dense rank. So for the rank, it must be used with order by, and it returns the rank of the current row within its partition with gaps. And peers are considered ties and receive the same rank. As we have said earlier, for row number, peers receive different numbers. Whereas with rank, if there are peers, they will receive the same number and the same rank, but with gaps. As you will see here in this example, so we are going to select the name, the continent, and life expectancy. Write rank, then we select our window. So over partition by continent, order by life expectancy in the descending order, and we put an alias as my first ranking. So if we execute that, we get the following. So the first window is for Asia, right? And we have here life expectancy from the highest to the lowest. And as you can see here, so we have the ranking. But when we get, for example, to the ranking number 15, we have the same values. And as you can see here, we have 15 and 15. But for the next value, we don't have 16, we have 17. This is why it is called ranking with gaps. Whereas, for example, if we use the dense rank, which is also used with order by, you can see here that for the same value, which is in here, we have 15, then 15, and for the next value, it will be 16. So here we have ranking without gaps. Okay, so this is the main difference between rank and dense rank. Both of them, they must be used with order by. And for the percent rank, so it returns the percentage of partition values less than the value in the current row. Of course, excluding the highest value. So the range is between 0 and 1 and represents the row relative rank. So if we execute that, we get the following. So we have 0, 2%, 4%, 6%, etc. Same thing when we get to the same value. So we have from 0.26, 28, then 32. We don't have 30, so we go directly to 32. Okay, same thing in here. 0.32, we go directly to 0.36 since we have two values that have life expectancy, which is 71.4. Okay, so for example, if we want to display all these ranking functions with row number in the same table to compare ranking with the other, we can use the following. So again, copy and paste all this. Okay, and we are going to add the row number. So we're going to put that as row number. Here we are going to change it to row number. Okay, so if we execute that, we get the following. So as you can see here, for the ranking, it is for row number. When we have the same value, it will assign different numbers. Okay, so we have 15 and 16 even though we have the same life expectancy. For my ranking one, which is the rank function, it will select for us 15, 15, then we have a gap, so we don't have 16, we go directly to 17, and same thing, we jump directly to 19. For the dense rank, we have 15, 15, 15, then we have 16, 16, and then we have 17, which means that we don't have gaps. Whereas for the percent rank, it will select for us the percentage. Okay, so this is for the ranking functions. And finally, we have the camDist function, which calculates the cumulative distribution of a value in a set of values. Same thing, we are going to select continent name and life expectancy, and we are going to select our cumulative distribution, and we are going to round that into 2 decimal numbers. Okay, same thing, we select our window using over, partition by continent, order by life expectancy, and we call that as life expectancy cumulative distribution. So if we execute that, we get the following. So the count is the total of countries within each continent. As you can see here, we have count of name in each continent. For example, in Asia, we have 51. And as you can see here, so when we have 1 divided by 51, it is 2%. Then we add 2% to 4%. Then we add 4% to 2%, etc. So this is what we call cumulative distribution. And we use camDist to calculate that using MySQL. So that's it for window functions in MySQL. I hope that you have understood the different types that we have explained. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.